The World Economic Forum and the World Health Organization are separate entities, but they collaborate often. And my concern about this international interoperable digital health ID is that it could serve as the platform for the full digital ID, as you can see in this chart from the World Economic Forum. In other words, you will need a digital ID and be in good standing. In other words, you can't be flouting them. You can't be refusing the most recent booster. You can't be criticizing them. This is based on the China social credit system. These are dangers that we face. That if we have this digital ID structure, we will need a digital ID to open a bank account, to access healthcare, to travel, to own a communications device such as a cell phone or a or a computer, to access government benefits. So in the United States, that would be like, Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security, to vote, to pay your taxes. So this is a way of tracking and surveilling us in every possible way. And in the wrong hands, it could lead to a Chinese-style social credit system, biotech surveillance, police state. So that's why I dropped everything to deal with this issue. And I just want to say, the panelists, we have, I think, 32 panelists. Every single panelist here is a hero in their own right. Every single one of them could speak for an hour or hours on this. Everybody gets 4 minutes because of the amount of time that we have. It's very pressed for time. But it is a great honor. I truly believe that this is the most awesome group of international panelists that has ever been gathered on this issue. So we're going to be kind of moving around the world. We're going to be going area by area. We're going to have Asia, we're going to have the Americas, we're going to have Europe and Africa. And many thanks also, especially to the people who are in Asia and Australia, where it's like 3 or 4 in the morning right now for them to, these people are committed. Every one of these is a hero. And if you come from the area of somebody, I would urge you to connect with them and take up the battle in your region of the world. So that being said, I would like to introduce our first speaker, who is almost so well known, she almost doesn't even need any introduction. The Honorable Christine Anderson, member of the European Parliament. She has been one of the most vocal, probably the most vocal member of the European Parliament in opposing the Great Reset, in opposing the EU's COVID-19 protocols, and basically standing for freedom. And her topic is to reject the IHR amendments. Thank you so much, MEP Anderson.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to see you again. And it's really quite a fantastic group you put together here. So thank you very much for allowing me to be part of this fantastic group. So anyway, so what we've been seeing in the recent decades, a quiet yet coordinated power grab has unfolded on the world stage. And it's not one led by tanks or tyrants or by unelected, it's led by unelected bureaucrats, multinational elites, and supranational institutions. And under the banner of globalism, these actors have sought to centralize authority, erode national borders, and bypass democratic processes in favor of a technocratic governance. This is not a conspiracy in the shadows. It is a strategy playing out in plain sight and often cloaked in the language of progress, sustainability, diversity, and global cooperation, and all of that. Globalists often portray their policies as solutions to transnational problems, climate change, pandemics, financial instability. But beneath this rhetoric lies a systematic attempt to override the will of local populations, the will of the people, dilute national sovereignty, and condition people to surrender their freedoms in exchange for promises of security and prosperity. The manipulation is subtle, but very effective. The appeal to fear, guilt, and moral urgency to bypass debate and stifle dissent. Just take a look at the word constitution. The whole purpose of a constitution was, and still is, to limit government, to bind them to the rule of law, and its main function is to protect the citizen from government. Now the Constitution and the rights enshrined in it are being redefined to not only protect government from citizen, but to also provide the government with legitimate power to undermine fundamental rights and ultimately abolish them altogether. And elected officials have been rather successful in convincing people that the Constitution no longer serves as a guarantee of freedom from government, but rather as a guarantee of freedom by the government, thus giving the government increasingly more competencies and more areas in which they can impose regulation to intervene in citizens' everyday life. I've been saying it in the past during COVID. COVID was, in fact, just a test balloon. They wanted to see how far they could go in restricting freedom, democracy, and the rule of law without encountering too much resistance. The undermining of fundamental rights, however, it was at that stage done predominantly cognitively by redefining concepts. Fundamental rights are now privileges, collectives' needs trumps the individual needs, and so forth, and publicly shaming dissidents. But the cognitive approach, or gaslighting, I should say, only got them so far. This test balloon, COVID, was also needed to find out what changes were required to impose even more severe restrictions. And they actually did identify two main areas. Area one, legislation, and the other one is competencies in the institutions. So legislation, quite obvious actually, the most obvious being a national infectious disease laws and what the state can take for as countermeasures. They have all been pretty much throughout all the countries been amended and changed. So they could lead up to the standards of the so-called COVID pandemic. But also so-called disinformation campaigns. Under initiatives to combat hate speech or misinformation, governments and tech platforms, often advised by global think tanks, have increasingly censored dissenting voices, especially those critical of lockdowns, mRNA injections, and climate mandates. Free speech, as the fundamental pillar of freedom, democracy, and the rule of law, in their mind, can no longer be allowed, as it threatens the politically desired narrative. Institutions, when it comes to that, yes, they found out the elected officials and in democratic institutions, they ran into a problem. Had they back then implemented even more severe restrictions, they would have run the risk of not getting re-elected. And trust me, the risk of not getting re-elected is the only thing that kept them from imposing even more severe restrictions. And this is where now the pandemic treaty proposals by the WHO actually come in. In response to COVID-19, proposals have emerged to grant the World Health Organization expanded powers to declare health emergencies and dictate responses globally. This would sideline national governments and impose top-down mandates on populations without local accountability. Elected officials, with the WHO having these powers, would no longer have to make these decisions anymore. They are reduced, or they reduce themselves, to the recipients of orders which they merely execute. And this provides them with what I call plausible deniability. Because if they were held accountable by the constituents for restrictions imposed on the citizens, they can now claim, it wasn't my decision, I would have never done that to you, but the WHO mandated it, so I have to. And then they will say we're bound by contract to act and legislate according to the WHO's decision making. So it turns out democracy itself is an obstacle which needs to be overcome, not by outright abolishing it, but by telling people or gaslighting them into believing it's solely done for their benefit and their own good. And we are seeing some examples of that. You have the climate policy and energy regulation under the guise of combating. I mean, we need to save the planet, right? So they need to impose all kinds of restrictions. We have the mass migration policies. Global compacts and treaties often pressure countries to accept mass migration, diluting cultural cohesion and placing strain on the public services, all while criminalizing those who oppose such measures as xenophobic. Then you have, of course, the transgender madness under initiatives to combat hate speech and misinformation. Government and tech platforms advertised by global think tanks once again are also increasing these voices. And that must be one of the most despicable programs they actually implemented, is to tell little children they were born in the wrong body and now we have to hack up their bodies to fix them. But the point is this: God all brought us to this earth, and the way he made us, we are perfect just the way we are. But each of these policies advances a vision of a borderless, post-democratic transhumanism world, one where is no longer government of the people, for the people, and by the people, but it will be a government of the globalitarian misanthropists, for the globalitarian misanthropists, and by the globalitarian misanthropists. As we move forward, the challenge is clear: reclaim democratic control, protect national sovereignty, and resist the slow erosion of freedoms under the weight of coordinated global agendas. The price of inaction today is the future in which our once free, liberal, and democratic societies, consisting of free individuals, are to be transformed into a collective in which the individual is merely part of a mindless, malleable mass under the totalitarian rule of globalitarian misanthropists, kept in check with the ultimate control tools of digital ID and digital currency, along with being imprisoned in these 15-minute ghettos. We owe it to our fathers and grandfathers who literally spilled their blood to fight former authoritarian rulers, to ensure that we, their children, would be able to live in freedom, democracy, and the rule of law. It is their sacrifice which obliges us to keep and defend this very precious gift for our children and our children's children's. We need to act now.
Thank you so very much, Honorable Christine Anderson. What a powerful speech and a great way to start us off. And we all owe you a huge debt of gratitude for carrying the torch in Europe and all over the world. Our next speaker is Alex Newman, president of Liberty Sentinel Media, an award-winning international journalist, educator, author, speaker, investor, and radio TV show host, and author of Indoctrinating Our Children to Death. And he will speak about protecting sovereignty for our children's future.
Thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Christine Anderson. What a wonderful, wonderful panel here. What a great opportunity to share the truth, and very grateful for the opportunity to be here. Folks, as we saw during COVID, these public health emergencies can be among the most powerful pretexts for stealing our rights, rights that our forefathers, as the Honorable Christine Anderson just said, literally fought and died for. Rights that here in America, our forefathers said it came from God himself and could never be infringed upon by governments that they said were established to protect those rights. We lost freedoms that we didn't even think of as freedoms prior to the pandemic. The right to work, the right to visit our family, the right to go to church, the right to go shopping. All of these came under threat. And if they can take those rights from us, there is nothing they can do. There is no boundary that they cannot cross. And as such, we can never allow this to happen again. The international health regulations and the pandemic agreement, so-called, they show us that the goals of this organization are absolutely nefarious. If these globalists are not stopped, the WHO will end up serving as an all-powerful ministry of health that will make the COVID tyranny that we just lived through look like child's play by comparison. And no matter what aspect of the WHO's agenda you look at, it is lawlessness and it is evil. And we need to understand that this is evil. This is not misguided. This is not a mistake. This was not a difference in policy opinions. This was evil. And we need to speak out in those terms, I think, loudly and clearly. If you look at the One Health agenda that Reggie alluded to, this is an effort to subordinate not just your individual rights, but even your health to nebulous claims of environmental progress and animal health. It is paganism and pantheism and collectivism all mixed into a horrific ideology that targets not just your health and your freedom, but even the most essential elements of your humanity itself. If you look at the WHO's so-called mental health agenda, which we see so clearly now infecting public schools around the world, it seeks to weaponize this entire field as a weapon against dissidents, like we saw in the Soviet Union. Essentially, if you don't agree with their global tyranny, you must be crazy and you must be drugged. If you look at the WHO's so-called misinformation and disinformation agenda, this is an effort not just to regulate what you can say, but even to regulate the information that you have the ability to access. How can you possibly make good decisions about your health and the health of your family if you cannot freely access information? If you look at the WHO's agenda to sexualize our children through what they very misleadingly refer to as education, this is really an effort to break down morality. It's an effort to break down the family. And the goal, as it has been from the very start of these agendas, is to atomize the individual, alienate him or her from those who love him or her the most, like parents, and then allow our would-be overlords to impose their degenerate and totalitarian values on our posterity. The UN is literally indoctrinating our children as we speak to see the UN and its agencies like the WHO as the last best hope for mankind. If you look at their vaccine agenda, seeks to forcibly seize control of our bodies and the bodies of our children while shoveling endless taxpayer-funded profits into big pharmaceutical companies. And how could we forget the WHO-backed neonatal tetanus vaccine campaign in Kenya that injected untold numbers of girls with vaccines contaminated with beta-HCG, thereby rendering them infertile? And folks, this is just at the superficial level. Once you start digging deeper, you look into the mRNA technologies, the CRISPR gene modification programs, the World Economic Forum's fourth industrial revolution, you'll see that it's not just our faith, our families, and our freedom that are in the crosshairs of these tyrants, but even our humanity itself. We need to understand that the WHO is a tool of tyrants. They're targeting our children even more viciously than they targeted us. And while there are various interests who pull the strings at the WHO, the Chinese Communist Party, Big Pharma, Western globalists, and depopulation zealots like Bill Gates, they're all united in their belief that they ought to be ruling over us, and public health is the perfect excuse. It's not enough for us to continually play defense and fight back against each and every WHO program or power grab. It is time to permanently neutralize this threat by having key governments, including the government of the United States, withdraw once and for all. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do this right now, and if we in the United States act and lead with boldness, others will follow us. Trump's efforts on this front are to be commended so far, but we need much more than that. I've spoken with several members of Congress recently. They told me that they're working now on the next big, beautiful bill. And regardless about our feelings about everything in these giant pieces of legislation, I believe we must insist, at a bare minimum, that Congress permanently enshrine our departure from the WHO and other tyrannical agencies into federal law. That way, the next deep state Democrat puppet who ends up in the White House cannot simply reverse it with a stroke of a pen as Joe Biden did. Folks, everything is on the line. We must not fail. Our children are depending on us. With God's help, we can and we will succeed. Thank you guys, and God bless you.
Thank you so very much, Alex Newman. Awesome as always. And following up just a little bit on what Alex said, I completely agree that we need legislation to make the withdrawal from the World Health Organization permanent. And I would point people to the antiglobalist.net website where we've got action items, also Sovereignty Coalition. You can actually take action if you're American to alert your legislators that you believe that it is important for there to be legislation to make Trump's executive order withdrawing from the World Health Organization permanent. So next up, we have the Israeli contingent. So I am, and the reason I put them here is number one, because of the time difference, but number two, because they have waged a successful battle to get their nation out of the international health regulations. And I believe they're the only ones who have. Also, and just personally, I flew out to speak at the Knesset. And so it was the longest flight I've ever taken to speak the shortest amount of time. I think I spoke 3 minutes. But anyway, the first up is Yehonatan Segev and Heidi Moses, activist extraordinaire. Yehonatan is the chairman of the Independent Israel Association. Heidi is a very effective lobbyist at the Israel Knesset. And they are going to talk about how they were able to actually get Israel, persuade the Knesset to withdraw from the the International Health Regulation amendments. And also an initiative that they have, and we are actually responding in some ways to this initiative of getting people to withdraw from the International Health Regulation amendments by July 19th. That's this Saturday. That's why we had this this week. That's why we're having this summit right now. So Yehonatan and Heidi, we are so happy to hear whatever you have to say.
Greetings. It's not obvious at all, this summit meeting. Thank you so much, dear Reggie. Thank you so much inviting us. This is a big honor for me, for us, for Israel. I am chairman of the Independent Israel. It's an organization that do exactly what the sovereignty coalition is doing in the States and all guys around the world. Thank you so much for this effort. I want to say thank you to the Ministry of Health of Israel, Mr. Uriel Busso. He decided that the new IHR is very dangerous for the sovereignty of Israel, for so much trouble that this document can do to our country. He decided to reject all the IHR. He declared on that last Friday, and everybody is very happy in the Knesset, in the government. A lot of people that understand the meaning of that, not just in Israel, in more countries. So we bless him. Of course, we support all the Knesset members that was part of it, and the ministers, of course. MK Limor Sunar Melech that with us, she did amazing work in the parliament, and MK Ariel Kalner, they worked so hard on that, and Simcha Rotman, and so many parliament members, and of course Heidi Moses, that my colleague. I hope she is here and join us. And this good news, I just want to share my part. Heidi will share the process. So my part is what exactly Reggie shared. The 19th to July, this is it. After the 19th, we don't have any option left. Israel is already got out from this terrible amendments. That means on our freedom, on our sovereignty, on our the most basic human rights, like everybody shares. So we can do a lot. We have still time. There's always a time, and right now we have the time. After tomorrow, after 2 days, we don't have the time. So right now the responsibility is not on them. It's not on the ministers or the prime minister. The responsibility is on us. Yes, in each country, there's 196 countries in the WHO, and the procedure, there's the amendments of the IHR, there's the treaty, the new treaty, the pandemic treaty or the pandemic agreement, you can call the same, and of course the procedure of dropped out from the WHO, those three different procedures. And right now, SOS, if you are in the organization or if you're not, you must to say no to the IHR and help the country to say no. And the way to do that is Reggie and James Rogoski and Philip Kruse and Alfred Schwartz and a lot of people, beautiful people that know exactly what we mean about we say the IHR is dangerous. We start a campaign together, and Reggie will share the document right now to send this document, this letter, to call all the prime minister, all the ministers, all the Senate member, all the parliament member, the relevant one, to send them the letter and remind them the responsibility of the parliament, because this is the parliament responsibility to read and know this agreement and to understand this agreement don't harm the sovereignty of the country and don't harm the sovereignty of the civilians. And the Minister of Health, Uriel Busso, find this agreement is harm the sovereignty of the country. So if one health minister recognize this, all the other ministers can understand it. So this is critical because like any agreement, there's before agreement and after. And right now we before. So when we can act is now, is today. Reggie will share the contact to the paper. You can contact with me. There's a big team of attorneys, of policy of the state. They can understand everything and about that and guide the parliament member, guide the minister what they can do. Right now, there's two options, very important two options. The first option to do emergency committee on that in the government committee or the cabinet, the parliament. You know, the relevant minister is the Minister of Health and Minister of Foreign Affairs, and of course the Prime Minister and the Judge Minister, and of course to do an open debate on that. It's very simple, very simple. Just send a letter that says, we reject the IHR until we decide otherwise, or just reject that. And this is very important even to the states, even to the United States, because if you remember, Trump dropped from the WHO, and Biden bring United States back. And this protects on legally, not binding. So it's very important on that. And of course, from other threats on the states, it's defend on the other threats, because the states was the USA was very smart. They put article to say the states can drop from legally from the WHO, and this is very important. So I share with you this information. Please contact me. My phone number is free and accessible. I admire you guys. You're amazing. Thank you for that. Thank you for what you're doing for humanity. There's no price for freedom. There's no price for true liberty. There's no price for democracy. Thank you for what you're doing. Sorry about my English. I love you. Bless from Israel. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Reggie.
Thank you very much, Yonatan. That what you and Heidi have done is awesome. Next, we're going to have a video from a member of the Israeli Knesset. His name is M.K. Ariel Kalner. He is an Israeli politician affiliated with the Likud party, serving as a member of the Knesset since 2023. And he was a major force in getting the Knesset to withdraw from the International Health Regulation amendments. His topic is welcomes the activity preserve national freedom from facing the power grab of the World Health Organization.
I warmly congratulate our Minister of Health, Mr. Uriel Busso, for his important and courageous decision to reject the international health regulations amendments proposed by the World Health Organization. This is a victory for national sovereignty and democratic accountability. From the moment I became aware of the proposed regulations and their far-reaching implications, I took action. Together with fellow members of Knesset, I led series of discussions in relevant committees demanding transparency, oversight, and above all, the protection of Israel's independence in matters of public health policy. Through persistent pressure and coordinated action, we succeeded in ensuring that the Israeli government would not surrender its emergency powers to an unaccountable international body. I would also like to take this opportunity to express my deep appreciation for Reggie Littlejohn and Sovereignty Coalition, who have been a source of inspiration and vital partnership in this global effort. The unwavering commitment to freedom and sovereignty has strengthened democratic resistance to international overreach. The cooperation between elected officials and civil society leaders across different countries, including the United States and Israel, is a powerful reminder that free nations must stand together in defense of liberty and sovereignty. Let this be a model for how determined citizens and legislators can unite to uphold the principles of sovereignty even in the face of mounting global pressure. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, M.K. Kalner. That was wonderful. And thank you for your leadership. I would like now to announce or introduce a personal hero of mine, Jessica Rose, Dr. Jessica Rose. So she's got a Bachelor of Science in Applied Mathematics, and she's got a PhD in computational biology and 2 postdocs in molecular biology and biochemistry. And she's also a surfer and a musician and just an overall awesome and very courageous person. So Dr. Jessica Rose.
Thanks, Reggie. Wow, thanks for including me. And I'm very honored to be among all of you people. I think this is the most important thing we can be doing at this point in time. I I'm just going to read a few lines from a recent article I posted about the IHR amendments. It's entitled Replacing Human Dignity with Equity. And just some background for people who don't know, the 77th World Health Assembly adopted a package of amendments to the International Health Regulation, which was formulated or reformulated in 2005 on June 1st, 2024, to quote unquote strengthen global preparedness, surveillance, and response to public health emergencies. These amendments are considered significant and include provisions for equity, a states parties committee, and national IHR authorities. David Bell, who is one of my heroes, he actually was former WHO, in a recent Brownstone publication wrote, and I quote, it's important for me to quote him here, July 19th is the last day that member states of the World Health Organization can withdraw from the IHR amendments without entering a multi-year withdrawal process. By failing to withdraw, they will be committing their taxpayers to fund the key surveillance aspects of a rapidly expanding industry that is the pandemic industrial complex. They will be required to set up an extensive network to search for well-established natural phenomena, including the tendency of viruses to mutate into variants. This has been a part of the natural world for hundreds of millions of years, but demonstrating it has recently become highly profitable due to a confluence of technological advances and intense marketing. I love this quote. I also have an immunology degree, and I can tell you that this is absolutely what's been going on here. Something that people might not know about these international health regulation amendments, of which there have been 3 made since 2005, one in 2014, one in 2021, and one in 2024, they were adopted by consensus without a vote by the 77th World Health Assembly on June 1st, specifically, most recently. So I didn't know that until I dug into writing this article. And I think that that's really important to address, especially considering that a lot of the people making the decisions in the background are unelected people. A couple of things I just want to point out that are really important for people to remember, and this is on the WHO's website in one of their question and answers pages. One of the questions is, will the amended IHR give WHO the ability to forcefully impose health measures, lockdowns, or restrictions on the populations of any country? And the response that they have in black and white is no. WHO will have no ability to impose any health measure, including lockdowns or other restrictions on the populations of any country. That is absolutely true, but they've already done it. They've demonstrated that this is absolutely what they plan to do by demonstration of already doing it, if you ask me. But it's important to remember that we are the only people who can decide what's right for us. And everybody this time around or the next time around can just say no. And another important aspect of that, and I'm going to also quote another question on the WHO's website, what are the implications for states parties of the WHO Director General determining a pandemic emergency? And the answer is, the determination of an event as a pandemic emergency serves as the highest level of global alert, and most importantly, it implies the issuance of temporary recommendations to states parties, and this is important, which, by definition, are not legally binding to guide them in preparing for and responding to the pandemic. They mentioned this twice in their Q&A section on their website, that these things are not legally binding. They are simply recommendations. And I don't think I have to remind everyone here that even though that was true before, humans treated other humans very badly because they assumed that all of this was legally binding. It never was and isn't now. I probably don't have time, but in my article, I post the statement by the government of Israel at the final plenary, which I'll just summarize very quickly. The reason why, and wow, love to all of you guys involved in making that happen. The rejection, by the way, or is what I mean. Basically what the letter said was, we didn't have time to read it. So if we if we don't know what's inside it, then we're not just going to adopt it. And in the end, once the understanding, as Jonathan pointed out, was clear what these IHR amendments were going to entail, it was fully rejected. So way to go! And just one more thing. This might shock people if they don't know this already. The 2023 version of the proposed amendments that have been on the table as per the World Health Organization's International Health Regulation, quote unquote, summary of proposed amendments includes, this still blows my mind, I've written about this twice, replacing the words dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms in the amendments to equity, inclusivity, and coherence, whatever that means. And the line reads, this is exactly what it says in their document: add equity, inclusivity, coherence, and solidarity as principles, either to replace the reference to dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms, or as an additional paragraph. So I think it's very clear that they have this in black and white. The intention is to replace these words. And that's exactly what Jonathan was saying when he said, once we understood, because once you understand what it means to remove dignity, human rights, and fundamental freedoms from the equation, you start having a pretty sordid idea of what might be to come if you keep inside, or if you don't reject these amendments. So I could keep going, but I don't have time. Well done, Israel, and to all the other member countries who've rejected this. And I strongly suggest you go to the website and pen a letter to your legislators, etc. And we have 4 days, so we still have time to opt out, and you have to actively opt out. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dr. Jessica Rose. Yes, you have to. Basically, your government needs to send a communication to the Director General of the World Health Organization, I believe is how you do it. It doesn't have to be long. It's like, my country opts out of the International Health Regulation Amendments. Now, I see Heidi Moses in the lineup here. Heidi, do you want to say a word or two? You and Jonathan, we're going to share a time, but I don't know what happened exactly with that. You want to say a word or two about all that you did as the mighty lobbyist to the Knesset, and if you have any tips to give people about how to run a successful campaign for your country to withdraw from the amendments, we'd love to hear it.
I would love to, Reggie. We miss you here in Israel. You came to our parliament and you did so much different. So my name is Heidi Moses. I'm a social lobbyist in the Israeli parliament already 17 years. And I promote like 19 laws, something like small, And when Jonathan came to me with this story, I was shocked. Like I didn't believe at the beginning. And then he explained it so good. So I started to do what I know to do in the parliament. And we were going around like 4 months together, and we were looking for members to understand the problem. And at the beginning, one is asking the other one, did you hear about the WHO? Yes, I heard about the WHO, but it's nothing. The minister says it's fake, the health minister. So everyone was saying fake, fake, fake. And then Jonathan and me, we came and we showed them one after the other one the truth, and you can't deny the truth. And after 4 months, when we were going around to one and another member parliament, we found a member, Simcha Rotman, and it was so amazing, because I've got to say, Jonathan was every time he saw that he's hungry in the kitchen. So he was starting to talk to him and telling him about this. And Jonathan did a really good job. And then I came to him, and he's the head of the Law and Justice Committee. And he told them, like, I told him, did you hear about Jonathan, what he said? So I need you to take your committee, and we need to talk about this in your committee. So he started to ask me if I can sign 6-member parliament in the same day. So from 7 o'clock at the evening until 12:30 at night, I've been signing 6 members. Okay. And we did it. We had 4 hours a committee in the Law and Justice Committee. And then we had 3 more committees in the Else Committee. And we saw how it works. Every time when Jonathan went through near the Else minister, I told him, don't talk to him. Do not talk to him. We are going to make it through the parliament. And we did it. We did it big time because we didn't talk to him and we came through the parliament. After 4 months, he's coming and he's telling me, well, job, you did a good job, Heidi, that you told us about this, because we didn't know anything. And he was standing with me 10 minutes and showing me how important and what I said, and how important how important it's for him to keep of Israel. And we saw that when we build it right, as I said to Jonathan, we success. And thanks God that we had so many good people. Also by you, like Frank Gaffney, that it was in Zoom talking in the committee, and we had Philip Cruzet, the lawyer, and we had you, Reggie, that you came 17 hours. It's unbelievable what you do, Reggie, really. And we saw that this makes the difference. When we see you and when we stay together, all countries, we can win it.
All right. Thank you so much, Heidi.
Thank you too. I'm like in the holiday and I'm going around with the kids, and I was trying so much to be with you. And thank you so much for being with us, Reggie.
Thank you.
And for all of you.
It was my pleasure. So, I mean, this is how you do it. There's no shortcut, okay? Heidi and Jonathan has shown what you do is, number one, you have to know the documents. You need to be able to interpret the documents, and you need to be able to talk to Knesset members and convince them, show them the truth, or show them one by one, and just be relentless. That's how you can turn this around. So thank you, Jonathan and Heidi. Now, Alfred Schwartz.
Absolutely right.
Alfred Schwartz has just joined us from Israel. He's going to give a 4-minute speech. He's an attorney and he's got many other degrees. His topic is how the WHO's amended IHRs threaten personal and national sovereignty. And I know, Alfred, that you could talk about this for an hour, but 4 minutes, please. But welcome, Alfred. It's great to see you. You need to unmute yourself. I don't know what's happening with Alfred. Okay, well, I'm sorry that I don't know what happened with Alfred. So we're going to now move on to Asia, and we have Izumi Kamijo. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Founding member of World Council for Health Asia and World Council for Health Japan, an activist, researcher, and writer. And the title is Preparation Status of Implementing International Health Regulations in Japan and Other East Asian Countries. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And good morning, good evening, and good day, everybody. So thank you very much for allowing me be a part of this immensely important symposium in a crucial time in human history. We cannot become aware enough of the fact that every step we do now has an impact on our immediate future as a human community on Earth. We are dealing with a global problem, and therefore our responses need to be addressed globally. However, we are acting locally and bottom up, seeking grassroots solutions. Each country faces its own challenges in a chess game of survival. The globalists are shifting their contingency plans in any given moment. For instance, Gates Foundation relocated its headquarters to Singapore recently, and promptly the ruling party passed a law that makes it almost impossible to refuse vaccination in case of pandemic. You will be fined 5 to 10,000 Singapore dollars or imprisoned for 6 to 12 months if you refuse to get vaccinated. In Japan, we have a tight network of 33 WHO collaborating centers and 19 centers of Global Outbreak Alert and Response Network, called GORM. The Cabinet Center for Infectious Disease Crisis Management, founded recently, acts as a command center in case of a pandemic, enabling it to become a permanent command center during a crisis. It has indeed declared to act according to the international health regulation of WHO. In comparison to Japan, Malaysia has only 5 WHO collaborating centers and 2 GORM centers, whereas its neighbors, Singapore, a small city-state, has 11 WHO collaborating centers and 6 GORM centers. Indonesia, second largest country in East Asia after China, has only 1 WHO collaborating centers and 2 GORM centers. It looks like that Japan and Singapore are selected for a hub for the globalists, following the law of least resistance and economic capacity and industry. Should we have a new pandemic situation, we will face a much coordinated machinery coming towards us than during the previous one. The Japanese people are too patient and enduring, working hard without complaining. This virtue has indeed been misused. In order to wake up to the population and make them have a look beyond the confined framework, we need to make people see what is happening around the world. It is time for a global awakening. We are helping each other to help ourselves. In a global scale, we are raising the frequency of the mass consciousness. So let's keep up the good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much. The next up is Masako Ganaha, who is a journalist and external advisor for the Sansieto party. So she is a freelance journalist and Japan Self-Defense Forces reservist. And she represents the operating committee of the Citizens and People's Association for correcting the Ryukyusimpo and Okinawa. I'm sorry, I'm sure I butchered those words, but anyway, welcome, Masako Ganaha.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear, we can hear you.
Thank you very much. And I'm so honored to be able to join this summit. And I'm from Japan and I'm an independent journalist. And today I would like to talk about frontline information war in Japan. And I've been working with researchers, scientists, and a lot of volunteers in Japan to stop mRNA injections that's harming its ongoing issue, and also to stop IHR amendment for government to rejected, although Japanese government seems to be not the one putting into the corner by the globalists. Actually, they are the one of the key puppet country government and leading the rest of the world into this global totalitarianism. I'm ashamed to say this, but that's how I view my government. And so Japanese people, we have been organizing massive rallies and a lot of petition and doing a lot of live streams and protesting on the street. But at this moment, we don't see any clear sign of Japanese government rejecting the amendment. So what people like myself are thinking is it's not about government, and once they don't reject it, it's a final decision is up to individual people like us. If we decide not to inject, if we decide not to follow it, then their globalist plot is over. So that's a very important issue and mindset that we need to think about, because let's think about it. We call it a vaccine. It's not a vaccine, and it's poison. And they killed millions of people across the world. How can we expect them to play with little regulations to save us? We need to disregard the whole system. So it's very important to talk about regulations and oppose it, but at the same time, it's important to talk about the legitimacy and how important it is to once again recognize we are the one to decide what to do with our body. So because of this baseline thinking in Japan, actually rejecting self-amplifying jab is actually very successful. As you know, Japan is the first government gave approval to self-amplifying injection, and they started it last year. But because of the massive campaign by the volunteers and doctors, scientists in Japan, we warn people not to get it because it's very dangerous. And then what happened after the rollout of self-amplifying one, people didn't get it. So the pharmaceutical company, which expected to sell a lot of it, couldn't make any, not any, but very small of what they expected. And so they decided to give us warning letters to sue us, to stop talking about this, spreading the awareness. And they even sued one of a congressman. His name is Kazuhiro Haraguchi, and he's an active representative of parliament in Japan. But we have not stopped talking about, because our way of doing this activity is very effective. So once again, what I want to address today is that even though Japanese government or the government, the country that you are from, it's not up to them, it's up to us. So that's the one key point I would like to address. And so I think time is running up. So just let me mention one thing. In Japan, we have built 21 million injection database, and it's open to public. So you can study about what's happening in Japan, and we can disclose what the government has been hiding. That's a huge move, currently hot topic in Japan. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. Let's keep fighting, and let's get united.
Yes, thank you so much, Masako Ganaha, for all your wonderful work. We now have Honorable Anil Prasad Hegde, who is a former minister of the Indian Parliament. So the floor is yours, Honorable Anil Prasad Hegde.
Respected panelists, organizers, and viewers, at the outset, I thank Ms. Reggie Littlejohn, founder and president of the Anti-Globalist International, for timely organizing this international summit entitled Reject the W.H.O and the Globalist Coup. I also immensely thank you for inviting me. First of all, a correction. I am not a former minister. I am a former member of parliament in India. When I saw the invite, I thought I must not miss this summit. Also, because I had raised this issue in 2024 February in the Indian Parliament, and subsequently followed it up in my correspondence with the Prime Minister and Health Minister of India. Para 3 of your invite mentions about Article 12, that as a result of the recent approval by the WHO's pandemic treaty, provision for setting up pathogen access and benefit sharing system is made, and it tells about the resultant risk it poses. Last year itself, in my letter to the government, I had mentioned about this issue, Article 12. With 4 days to go to reject the amendments to the IHR, the main concerns are erosion of sovereignty, absence of parliamentary debate, threat to constitutional rights. The new definition of relevant health products only includes the pharmaceutical drugs, diagnostics devices, gene and cell-based therapies. There is no mention of vitamins, minerals, herbs, homeopathic remedies, or any other natural solutions. There has been no after-event review of the failures associated with the fraudulent use of the PCR tests, ventilators, drugs such as remdesivir, and the viral vector and mRNA vaccines. Article 1. The Director General of the WHO would be empowered to declare pandemic emergency based solely upon his determination, with no checks and balances. There is no procedure by which member nations can vote to terminate the declaration made by the Director General. Articles 1, 12, and 49. The WHO Director General failed to properly submit the final version of the proposed amendments with at least 4 months' notice, as required by Article 55, Clause 2. WHO, through its treaty and IHR amendments, hopes to become the ultimate authority on health in a One Health approach, which would grant unchecked powers to the organization and extend far beyond the realm of health, encroaching upon areas of food economy, environment, and individual liberties. Its provisions enable the WHO to unilaterally declare pandemics, assume control over national governments, mandate medical procedures, and impose restrictions that violate citizens' constitutional rights. The amended IHR deepens our concerns. They could lead to draconian measures undermining our national interests if accepted. It is important to note that the WHO, an external and unelected body funded by private interests and companies, will take over policy making in the health sector, and the achievements of our sovereign governments will come to a naught while putting the health of our citizens at risk. Finally, I want to let you know that I am deeply involved in this campaign, and in this context, I have met parliamentarians in London, the Netherlands, Germany, Latvia, other than India. My appeal to all sovereign nations is that they must be willing to exit WHO and say so. My party, the JDU, is with the ruling coalition in the center in India, and my party is one of the 2 biggest parties which is supporting this ruling party. Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your courageous and persistent international advocacy. So next, we are going to move from Asia and India to Australia and New Zealand. Most of the people are going to be by video because it's very, very late. It's the middle of the night there. First video is going to be from attorney Katie Asby-Coppins from Australia and New Zealand. She is a lawyer with PJ O'Brien and Associates in New Zealand, and her topic is engaging governments to resist the International Health Regulation Amendments and the Pandemic Treaty.
Hello everyone, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're checking in from. It's such a privilege to be here at the summit. I'm afraid I've had to pre-record to bookend really what is the Australian, Australasian Antipodes recording alongside Malcolm Roberts, Kirsten Murfitt, Sue Gray and Johnny Lada. It's a privilege to be with you here today, and I just want to really touch on a few things and experiences that we've had down here, and to highlight the importance of what the people movement can do. So I'm going to be finishing off today, or our section is going to be finishing off with Malcolm Roberts. Malcolm, thank you for being the senator that has stayed true on these topics. You're such a breath of fresh air. It's so good to hear that these things get discussed in Parliament because of you, and thank goodness for you doing everything that you do. I just want to touch on a couple of things. The first of is that the Aligned Council of Australia in the space of a year has managed to amass and bring together 2 million Australians pushing back against the World Health Organization pandemic treaties, of which there are 2. We're focused today on the International Health Regulations, an amendment to the 2005 regulations that were done in 2024. We've got until the 19th of July to reject those. Why I'm particularly concerned about the regulations is because they back-end a lot of the power of the decision-making, and when countries say that there are no sovereignty issues around the WHO, they're talking about the pandemic agreement, and decisively so, they can say that there's a provision in there that says sovereignty is not impacted, but then you flip over to the regulations and there are issues with the regulations. The National IHR Implementation Authority, I think, is a huge issue. That's a body within Australia that will have to report back to the WHO to ensure compliance, to ensure that we're inserting the requirements into our domestic legislation. And as I interpret the regulations, they also include provisions that are outside of a pandemic period. They include surveillance, which we can see with the mis and disinformation bill that we've just managed to reject, but I can anticipate will come through with the new government. The digital ID, which we are currently being quietly scanned for while we're on social media and while we're online to determine whether or not we're 16. We've got a lot of things that we're going to be coming down hard very quickly, and while America might be flying through on Teflon in a lot of ways, these things are going to be happening out in the outer echelons, such as Australia and New Zealand. I will allow the others to elaborate further, but in the meantime, it's such a privilege to be here. I'm so proud of what we've managed to achieve in the space of a year. In less than a week, we've had people use our Voters' Voice tool, which is www.au-rejects.who.com.au. That's seen 9,000 people send individual emails to all their politicians at 2 clicks of a button and the insertion of their postcode, and that has really created a lot of momentum. The answers have been fascinating. The responses have been incredible, and I'm so proud of everybody that's taken a part. That's just 9,000 people in the space of a week. That's separate from the 40,000 people that have signed the Mark Butler letter, which is being delivered tomorrow, just to remind him who is in charge of who, and it's definitely not the WHO. And yeah, it's amazing. It's so amazing to be with so many incredible people doing incredible things. Congratulations, Israel. I'm so proud of you guys and what you've managed to achieve. Look, the argument is easy. Reject the WHO regulations. We don't need them. Empower yourself to make decisions for yourself. We know the last pandemic was not run at all well. Everything was overinflated with modelling, unnecessary. The World Health Organization's recommendations changed from evidence-based recommendations for non-pharmaceutical interventions to politically driven ones, and that's a real shame. It's an organisation that has been captured, tragically so. It's not doing its job. It should never have taken private funding, and it really needs to return either to its core base, or we need to have a massive rethink. So that's all I ask, is nothing's groundbreaking in what is being proposed. Let's reject the IHRs, and we can carry on and make decisions that are right for the country, based on decisions made by people that are acting in the best interests of the country.
Okay, I guess that video kind of cut off, but thank you very much, Attorney Katie Asby Coppins, that for your leadership and for your video. And now we turn to Attorney Sue Gray from New Zealand. Now, I understand that it is 4 a.m. right now in New Zealand. So Attorney Sue Gray, you absolutely get the prize for the greatest sacrifice of sleep of all of the panelists. Thank you so very much. So Attorney Sue Gray is the co-leader of New Zealand Outdoors and Freedom Party, and her topic is fighting back against the WHO. Thank you, Attorney Sue Gray.
Thank you so much, Reggie, and thank you to everybody who's involved in this amazing event. And I just so am grateful to be involved. I have to be a little bit honest here. I'm actually in the UK at the moment, so it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's not 4 a.m. in the morning in New Zealand. And this leads me to something very interesting. I travelled to UK via Africa, and through Africa, I spoke to a lot of people about COVID and how it had been for them. And I got the most beautiful answer from a Maasai warrior who I asked him, I said, you understand about COVID, that it's been a big problem around the world. How was it in Tanzania? And he said, well, I don't think it's been here yet. And for me, that sums it all up, because what we've had a lot of mind control, but we haven't actually had a lot of real problems from COVID. We've had a lot of problems from the COVID response. So when you think about this issue with the international health regulations, why would any responsible government want to hand over even more control to an organisation that provided such bad advice throughout COVID? It absolutely defies belief that we would give them more control over our individual bodies, our democracies, or anything else, indeed, for that matter. I've done a lot of reading. I've been lucky. I've had a little bit of time away from New Zealand. I get a little bit overwhelmed because I've done a lot of the court cases there with COVID. I've defended myself, and I've defended a lot of our health practitioners from the disciplinary proceedings for trying to do the orthodox thing, which was promote informed consent. But during COVID in New Zealand, as with many other countries around the world, trying to promote informed consent became labelled as misinformation and disinformation by our government. And it's been incredibly difficult practicing law in that circumstance, where it was like everything that we were taught about law and everything we were taught about human rights, everything we were taught about the New Zealand Bill of Rights, our international rights, got forgotten, buried, and hidden away. But I've just found a book by John Pilger, The New Rulers of the World, which was written in 2002. And what he says, very interestingly, is globalization, he does a quote, globalization does not mean the impotence of the state, but the rejection by the state of its social functions in favor of repressive ones, and the ending of democratic freedoms. So that was in 2002 in relation to the Iraq War and some of the other issues he was writing about. But if we look at it now, this is just another step in that same process. And again, the first step, of course, is to urge our states to not endorse these regulations and to pull back and to put in opposition. We're having a lot of trouble getting our government to do that because Sir Ashley Brimfield, who was our Director General of Health through COVID, who pushed the COVID response, was then our representative in the international health regulations, and he was one of the drivers of the whole thing. Our government's already accepted it. But our second and stronger response, and our colleague from Japan who spoke earlier, I totally agree with her. It's people power. If the government won't listen to the people, the government has no social license from the people. The remedy we have as people is to reclaim our democracy by not giving any power to our government. If they are not respecting democracy for us, we need to pull back and say, well, we are not handing over our bodily sovereignty, our minds, our consciousness, or any of our other fundamental rights as human beings to you. We are not slaves of the state. We are individuals. We are human beings, and we have these fundamental rights. And so my message is that we must empower each other. We must speak to each other, raise awareness, and do what they did in Tanzania. If you ignore it, it actually doesn't exist. So it's people power that will win the day until we can reclaim democracy. You know, as the Outdoors and Freedom Party, we strongly promote local people making local decisions, respecting that different communities have different values and may want different outcomes. And that is not anti-science. That is being human. That is respecting that there's evidence, but there are also assumptions, and different people may choose to do things different ways. This whole globalization is the opposite of that. So I've got my other colleagues from New Zealand, the amazing Kirsten Murfitt, who's going to cover some more detail of the international health regulations. I just want to say it's up to us to stand up, fight back, say no. And thank you, everybody, again, for all the amazing work you're doing.
All right, thank you, Attorney Sue Gray, and I'm glad that it's not 4 in the morning where you are. All right, so now next up are going to be two activists, John Larter and Graham Hood from Australia, who have submitted a joint video here. They are the chairman of the Aligned Council of Australia. But anyway, they pretty much introduce themselves in the video, and they really talk about the horror story that's happening in Australia, and they ask for help. So I think it's important for the world to know really what's going on in Australia. So let's play that video now.
Well, hi everyone from Australia. It's great to be involved in this summit. We wish we could be involved personally, but as you're all meeting, it's about 1 a.m. where we live, and we're grateful to be able to give you this message from the land down under. My name is Graham Hood. I'm a former Qantas pilot. I was a senior captain with Qantas, Australia's flag carrier, and in 2021, I rejected the vaccine mandates and lost my job as a result. I've become very vocal about it ever since, and it's brought me into contact with some amazing people, and also none more amazing than my friend sharing screen with me, John Larter.
Thanks, Graham. And yeah, look, I was a paramedic for 25 years with New South Wales Ambulance. I refused to take the jab and was sacked. My wife, also a nurse in the health system in New South Wales, sacked. We took on the health department with the Supreme Court of New South Wales, but ultimately all the opportunities fell away in the court system. There was no justice at all. And Graham and I have gone on to interview over 500 people on our podcast, www.grubbery.com.au. We've interviewed specialists like Dr. Peter McCullough. We've just got off a Zoom with Dr. Paul Merrick from the US. So Dr. Charlie Teo, we are interviewing so many people about the vaccines, the injuries. We're interviewing the injured, those that have lost loved ones. The stories are horrendous. But then we also have the lockdowns and all the other stuff that went along with this madness here in Australia. And I've been elected as the chairman of the Aligned Council of Australia, and we've got a great board on that panel, and we are fighting against the Australian government's intention to sign those IHRs, and we are vehemently opposed to them. They will absolutely cause destruction and chaos for Australians. They will give the WHO the opportunity to take over Australia in a pandemic, essentially throwing our sovereignty out the door. It's an absolute disgrace.
Yep.
What are your thoughts on that, Graham?
Well, absolutely it is, John, because we've seen even without those laws, Australia become one of the most draconian countries in the world when it came to vaccine rollout and mandates. Melbourne, one of Australia's largest cities, was locked down for just under 300 days. It was the most locked down city in the world. Protesters who were people, everyday people, were being fired at with rubber bullets by the police who behaved like thugs. People were being arrested and charged for being away from home. It was just the most criminal thing. Now, most of the world would say that if anything goes pear-shaped in the world, there are three countries you'd probably want to be in. One would be Canada, the other Australia, and the other New Zealand. But all three countries have got the one thing in common: World Economic Forum involvement, Marxist communist governments and leftist governments that are taking over, and we are under a Marxist leftist takeover around the world. It's been played out beautifully for the last few decades, and we've all fallen into it. And it's up to people like us to stand. We have to say no to the IHR. We have to say no to the WHO. We have to say no to the United Nations. All these institutions we once put our faith in, they're all gone. They don't deserve our faith anymore, and we have to stand. And we are dedicated. We've interviewed, as John said, more than 500 episodes we've done of our podcast, Club Grubbery. We've interviewed former prime ministers, high-powered lawyers, doctors, scientists, researchers, and the victims who have been decimated by this vaccine, this so-called gene. That's a gene therapy, let's be honest. These people have been victimised. They did what the government told them. They're suffering. The vaccine compensation scheme has been worthless and is now dissolved. There is nothing to support these people at all. And while all this is going on, the political posturing to protect those who did the wrong is doing great harm. Because why? It's preventing doctors like Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Pierre Corey and Dr. Paul Marrick and Dr. Angus Dalgleish, Dr. Asim Malhotra, and so many others from working on the solutions, because our people are dying, and they're dying because of gross negligence and absolute corruption. The IHR, if it's implemented, will do so much damage to our sovereignty, and it's just the thin end of the wedge. If we don't act now, we're going to be gone. So we just thank you all for all the work you're doing. And back to you, John.
Yeah, look, finally, I just absolutely encourage everyone to watch our interview with Dr. Astrid Stuckerberger, who is actually a panelist here on this forum. She absolutely nailed it. The corruption and madness that is going on at that World Health Organization beggars belief. The whole joint should be dismantled. And that's evident by President Trump signaling that the US is getting out of it, Israel now as well. New Zealand's flagged that they're not going to sign this IHR. We've got Argentina and I think Italy and a few other countries. So our weak Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, a communist, is going to sign us up to this madness, and it beggars belief. Fair dinkum, we are in all sorts of trouble. I mean, as Hoodie alluded to there, you would have thought that you'd go to Canada, you'd go to New Zealand, you'd go to Australia for refuge in crisis. Well, no, the crisis is here. We are in a state of absolute disrepair in this country, and we need help. We need help globally to get rid of these elitists, the people like Bill Gates, to shut this all down so we can restore normality.
And we've got a huge following at our podcast, an amazing following, and we'd be happy to put any of you to air. Any of you watching us now, we would love to have you as a guest on Club Grubbery. So you can do that by going to the website www.clubgrubbery, grubbery.com.au, and get in touch with us through there, and all through Astrid Stuckelberger. I'm sure she'll be able to pass on contact details for you, and we would embrace you on our program to get this message out there. Truth is the only thing that will set us free. So I want to bless you all. Thank you so much for including us in this. John, final comment?
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
You couldn't make this stuff up, and we're not. God bless you all, and may we all achieve our wildest objectives to make us free and safe, we pray. God bless you all. Bye for now.
All right. Well, thank you, John Larder and Graham Hood, for the video and for letting us know how really horrible things have been in Australia. Next up is attorney Kristen Murfitt from New Zealand. She is a principal attorney at KM Law, and she has led the citizens-initiated referendum to terminate New Zealand's relationship with the World Health Organization. She is appearing by video.
Hi everyone, it's Kirsten Murfitt here, a lawyer from New Zealand. I'm sorry I can't join you on the live feed this morning, but by the time you guys go live, it'll be 3 a.m. in New Zealand, and I have just got back from a 2-week roadshow to exit the WHO. So I've started a citizens-initiated referendum, and I need to get 400,000 wet ink signatures from New Zealanders that are on the electoral roll. Now, if I get those 400,000 wet ink signatures, which is a huge ask, it will actually trigger a referendum. And the beauty about this is it will force the referendum and force this into a national conversation. So every New Zealander that's on the electoral roll will have to vote. So at the moment, it's really hard for me to get my message out. But if I get the referendum, the media and everyone's going to have to talk about these issues. So millions and millions of New Zealanders will start to learn what many of us do know. But anyway, I just thought I would take a little step back. So New Zealand rejected the 1 December amendment in 2023, and that was partly, well, it was due to people in New Zealand raising awareness, and partly due to a parliamentary petition that I started, and we got 23,000 signatures in 3 weeks. Actually, I think it was 26. But anyway, Parliament did listen because it was a huge number in such a short period of time. So if we can get the 400,000 wet ink signatures and force a referendum, I'm pretty sure Parliament's going to listen as well, as we're going into an election cycle in New Zealand. But what concerns me is that the documentation that I have found about the international health regulations and the pandemic treaty, it all talks about transparency and accountability. So here is a document negotiating the mandates from February last year, and it specifically says New Zealand should support clear and credible transparency and accountability obligations on the states and the WHO. So I'm all for transparency, I'm all for democracy. But what really concerned me is that they opened up public submissions last February. And I wanted the latest copy of the amendments because if I'm going to make a submission on the amendments, surely I need to know what I'm submitting on. So I couldn't find the latest one. So I wrote to our government and did an Official Information Act. It's sometimes called a Freedom of Information request in different countries. And this is what I got back. So here is the letter. And it says, a copy of the latest WHO International Regulations Amendments 2005 is withheld in full under Section 6B(2) of the Act, as its release would prejudice information entrusted to the Government of New Zealand on the basis of confidence by an international organisation. Now, does that sound very transparent to you? And I'm finding it very difficult to find any more information about what's happened since then. We will be going to a national interest test, but that is actually required when we enter a treaty like this. So before we realised that the agreement for the wording of the pandemic treaty had been announced, a few weeks before that, the government announced that don't worry about the pandemic treaty because we're going to do a national interest test. So I think many New Zealanders believed that that was a really good thing and that, you know, we were going to be part of the process. But it's actually just a part of the standing orders of Cabinet. So it feels like, yeah, maybe we're a little bit hoodwinked on that one. So yeah, we need to keep raising awareness, and I'd love everyone to support the Citizens Initiated Referendum petition, even if you can't actually sign in wet ink because you're not on the New Zealand electoral roll. You can help me get the message out there. It's very hard to get the message out there. Also, I've got a parliamentary petition for those that are outside of New Zealand, and that's an electronic one with the exact same thing. So I don't really mind how we get our message to Parliament, but we need to tell the New Zealand Parliament. We need New Zealanders to actually decide whether the WHO serves our interests in 2005. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Kristen Murfitt. Next up is Senator Malcolm Roberts, who is an Australian politician with the One Nation Party, and his video is entitled Resisting Governmental Overreach from Digital IDs to Vaccine Mandates.
In May of 2021, the United Nations World Health Organization released a report titled COVID-19, Make It the Last Pandemic. The report called for closer cooperation between nations and more power for the World Health Organization to coordinate and initiate that collaboration. In December 2021, the UN World Health Organization held a special assembly to consider a proposal for a pandemic treaty to give effect to their report. The proposal from the United Nations was a nefarious document. It proposed turning the World Health Organization into the World Health Police, with powers to compel member nations to comply with any directive from the WHO. This could include forced vaccinations, forced medical procedures, lockdowns, border and national closures, business closures, school closures, and the spending of huge sums of money on medical countermeasures. Those provisions were not a conspiracy theory. The proposal actually said in plain English the WHO should have the power to force medical procedures on citizens in member nations. It allowed the Director General of WHO to declare a pandemic at any time, for any reason, meaning the world would forever be under a pandemic order and the WHO would forever be able to order these horrible anti-human measures. Fortunately, the 2021 Special Assembly failed to reach an agreement when a bloc of 42 African nations opposed the proposal. Having been used for decades as a testing ground for disease and vaccine research, coming at a huge cost in African lives, these nations were not signing up for more deaths. The outcome of the World Health Assembly in 2021 was to set in place a 3-year time frame for a pandemic agreement to be developed. A committee of WHO luminaries was set up to review the proposal. These were many of the world's leading health experts who had worked with the WHO for many years. Their wisdom shone through, and they tore the proposed treaty to shreds, stating it would destroy support for the WHO. Their staff did not want to become the World Health Police. They just want to work on improving health in underdeveloped member countries. In the end, that's what prevailed. Multiple new drafts were produced across 3 years and given to a steering committee to test support, and each time failing to get the numbers. A new version followed, which further watered down the compulsion and the destruction of national and personal sovereignty. A final version, a consensus document, was produced and passed at the World Health Assembly in May this year. Gone were 50 pages of nefarious provisions. Nothing that gave the WHO powers of compulsion has survived from the original version. This agreement contains no compulsion on member states. Wherever the wording says a member state shall, it's always followed by a modifier, such as subject to national laws, having mind to national sovereignty, subject to financial resources, and so on. There are no binding provisions in this agreement beyond the need to advise the WHO when a disease outbreak occurs that may be of national or international significance, which is a good idea. After all, China sat on COVID for months in 2019 to give the billionaires time to hold Event 201 and to craft a response that maximised their financial benefit, a response which caused untold suffering and deaths around the world using fraudulent science, mass propaganda and military coercion. A deadly response which was not designed to minimise suffering. Instead, the response was designed to maximize the transfer of wealth from everyday citizens to the world's predatory billionaires. For complete clarity, this document's latest version is not what people are saying it is. There's no loss of Australian sovereignty and no new powers for the World Health Organization, no new powers that can be forced on a member state. Our political party, One Nation, of course opposes the pandemic agreement and the changes to the international health regulations that implement the provisions of the agreement, for the simple reason we do not accept there is a role in the world for these unelected, unaccountable, anti-human bureaucrats. This has always been One Nation policy. In my first Senate speech in 2016, I called for an Oz exit, Australia to exit the UN. And in April 2022, thanks to my diligent and knowledgeable staff team, I was the first Australian politician to oppose the pandemic treaty. Oz exit is necessary because the UN and their agencies, including the WHO, have been hopelessly compromised by the world's parasitic, indeed predatory billionaires. The WHO now gets most of its funding from entities tied to pharmaceutical companies. In return, the WHO mandates those companies medical products. It's classic crony capitalism. Naked wealth transfer from the people. It's theft. By centralising power in the hands of unelected foreign bureaucrats, we've made the buyout of the UN easier. All the people they need to compromise to become the de facto owners of the world are in the one spot, pretending to act on our behalf while actually lining the pockets of their billionaire parasitic benefactors. These people are not the good guys. These people are your prospective owners. Make no mistake, our health authorities and our politicians have signed up to this agenda. In the next pandemic, they will do the same nefarious, destructive, murderous policies again, and this time they will say, the WHO made us do it. Well, the truth is that the WHO is not making anyone do anything. These people are choosing to behave like this because it's good for their power, their egos, and their careers. The UN and its agencies are in darkness and cannot be saved. One Nation calls for a withdrawal from the World Health Organization, from the United Nations, from the World Economic Forum, and from the World Bank. Thank you. I wish you a successful conference.
So I am not sure. I can't hear Senator Roberts anymore.
His ended, and Dr. Astrid is up next.
Okay.
Heading over to Europe.
Oh, okay. So, but okay. So I think that it's fair to say now that there's a range of opinions here, and I appreciate Senator Roberts and his views. My views on some of this differ, and I would ask people to go to Globalist International and look at the resources page on the World Health Organization for sort of chapter and verse on the ways that that the current draft, or the draft of the international health regulations that passed, is extremely problematic. But anyway, I think that he makes a good point in the sense that even if things are not coercive, people who want to will view them as coercive and implement them that way. So anyway, thank you very much, Senator Roberts. And now we are moving over to Europe, and also we have one person from South Africa. First up is Dr. Astrid Stuckelberger, who I met in Geneva last year at the World Health Assembly. Extremely lovely and brilliant person. MSc, PhD, PD, her degrees. She is a WHO whistleblower, a former UN WHO employee and consultant, and research and training director at the University of Geneva School of Public Health and the Swiss National Science Foundation. Her topic is the WHO treaty and the IHR amendments are illegal and unconstitutional. Thank you, Dr. Stuckelberger.
Yes, hello everybody. Can you hear me? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thank you, Reggie. Great to be here. Great to be with everyone up to Australia. I'm so happy they're with us. And I'm going to talk on behalf of a group of lawyers, 16 lawyers, and Virginie de Arrojo-Recha, an attorney at law, and Rainer Fulmich, with whom we have, and Dexter Reinfeldt from South Africa, which I have challenged last year when we met for that meeting, challenged them to see how we could to show better the massive violation of the international instruments that the United Nations has put in place and that WHO itself has put in place. So I'm not going to read this declaration called Declaration on the Principle of State Sovereignty and the Incompatibility with the negotiating text of the new WHO pandemic agreement and amendment of the IHR. But I want to say that there are much more countries now: Mexico, Argentina, Ecuador, Panama, South Africa, and then in Europe, France, Germany, Italy, Belgium, and Switzerland. So I represent them a little bit. So that makes it expanded, and I will send them the video. So what I want to say is that, yes, it's interesting to just reject a text, but the danger with that is, that there are so many systematic fraudulent events scientifically and at the international public health and public law level that we cannot just say, oh, I reject the IHR amendments. So I'm going to give you 3 key points where it is like the senator said, like John and Graham and Katie said, we have to reject massively, not just the IHR amendments, but the treaty and every activity. How can we accept even a text when the corruption is so blatant within the agency? That's the key point. So I don't have much time, so I will go straight to the main points. Number 1, the faults in function and mechanism of WHO within the United Nations and with the United Nations. So they are actually violating the Charter of the United Nations, the Universal Human Rights Declaration of Human Rights, but in WHO, the WHO Constitution and the international regulation itself of 2005, which we were teaching up to 2014. So I'm surprised to see another version. I don't think there is one adopted except the one next year. So indeed, we can say that member states have not given their agreement, number 1, for any transfer of competence to matters of public health. Normally, every country decides for an epidemic, it makes with its own criteria, and then if they want to be part of a pandemic when it is just a region or it is local, you cannot just go and say it's a pandemic. So number 1, there is no time a mention of shared or exclusive competence for the benefit of WHO Director General or WHO Secretariat for governing bodies directing a pandemic, directing an epidemic, and we have not given them the authority, direct order, or prescribed by domestic law or policies of any party, or we have not mandated them to stop travelers, to impose vaccination mandates, to make diagnostic measures and therapeutic new ways with PCRs, who are total fraud, or implement lockdowns. So the Article 24 of the even the pandemic treaty recalls the independence and sovereignty of member states, which cannot be subject to a supranational body. In fact, they made a change in the IHR amendment, the new version, and there is nothing binding anymore. So they know very well what they're doing. So that was number 1. Number 2, that will be very clear. It is absolutely essential for us to verify the impact of public health measures proposed by any measure of WHO on the rights and freedom of citizens, of the national authorities and the national text and the Constitution. And this has been violated massively from, I have lists and lists of how much they have violated everything we are seeing. Definition of pandemic has not been really clear, as a definition of epidemic is very clear normally in science. The definition of case studies, the end of an epidemic and an epicurve, the definition of an emergency, and what type, and the duration, and the exposure, and the health risk, and the health characterization of any pathogen, and not just a virus, which has never been proven. And I want to say I was in charge of the case studies, and there are much more important things like foodborne and waterborne diseases, parasites, bacteria. Then there is chemical, and there is radioactive elements. And the radioactive, I would add biotech weapon. And this is what I see today in this. So number 2, human rights has to be compatible with our basic human rights, natural law. You know that, Reggie, because we talked about it, and with the Constitution. Number 3, maybe the most important and blatant, is that the amendments of IHR would commit the finances of member states, thus providing guarantees in favor of foreign states, which implies that it could only be ratified by virtue of law in accordance with the state constitution. In our case, in any case, the member states have to look for their articles. So consequently, the amendments of IHR cannot be adopted as they stand without undermining, they cannot be adopted as they stand undermining the sovereignty of any states. We would also like to draw your attention, and that's very important because nobody mentions that, to the fact that the problems of conflicts of interest with Bill Gates, with the Rockefeller. Bill Gates is in charge of the global vaccine plan from 2010 on in WHO. We know that. So the problem of conflict of interest, which were highlighted in the report 12,283, entitled The Handling of the H1N1 Pandemic, More Transparency Needed, by Mr. Paul Flynn, dated 7th of June 2010, has to date not been resolved. We cannot accept a text if we have not resolved the scam of H1N1 and the one of COVID. So therefore, this conflict of interest in the governance is opposite to our constitution. The interest of the private sector goes against the interest of the population and we the people. And therefore, we have we had already concluded that in our text is that member states can no longer be bound to WHO, to the Constitution, to the IHR, to even the UN, because the UN is like the father, mother of WHO. So they have accepted, they are accomplice of that. So be bound to the WHO Constitution while private partners guide this institution, nor can we be bound to the UN, which does exactly the same with many agencies. And as it stands, we had affirmed last year, but we can affirm everybody can do that. Any action, adoption, signed, undertaken through WHO or United Nations and the United Nations on behalf of member states and their populations will be contrary to international law, national law, and will violate the sovereignty of member states and people's natural law. And therefore, we must not consent. And I would agree, we must exit, dismantle, because everything is too corrupted since the first UN after the First World War, and rebuild something completely new with transparency and with the people. That's it. It's important. So everybody can write, but make copies. I want to say they make copies, not just write to Tedros, because Tedros is just an employee of the United Nations. So Tedros would copy to the Secretary General, to the head of the Security Council, which is the head of the Kraken. That's what I show in John and Graham podcast. And then you have to also copy your Minister of Health and your president, your prime minister. Make an email, copy it, send it. But that's how I think we, the people, are doing. And thanks, Reggie. This summit is important because it shows the way to be global. We together can talk on behalf of our groups, and I hope with more people would agree with us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Stuckelberger. Next up is Shabnam Palisa Mohammed, who is an attorney from South Africa. She's the founder and CEO of Transformative Health Justice of South Africa. She's the chair of the steering committee of the Children's Health Defense Africa and co-founder of the African Health Independence Solidarity Alliance. She has many other credentials. So anyway, her video is about the WHO and Africa global health implications. Oleg, can we have the video from Shabnam?
No, we don't.
Oh, she was sending it. I heard that she had sent it. Andrea, did you say that she had already sent it, or did she say she was going to send it and then she didn't send it? I thought I heard that she did send
She
it.
sent it today. It should be in your email. Why don't we move on and then return later once it's loaded up?
Okay.
All right, so the next up is Sven Roman from Sweden, a Swedish pediatric and adolescent psychiatrist and opinion leader who founded the Doctor's Appeal. His title is The Totalitarianism of the WHO.
Okay, I'm very honored to be here. My name is Sven Roman. I am a child and adolescent psychiatrist, and together with two fellow doctors, I launched the Doctor's Appeal in 2021 as a Swedish counterpart to the Great Barrier Declaration, which had been launched in autumn 2020 by renowned professors, including Professor Martin Kulldorff, who is Swedish. Like the Great Barrier Declaration, the call from the Doctor's Appeal criticized the official COVID strategy, and not least the direction and actions of the WHO. The WHO has never been an evidence-based nor a democratic organization. In 2009, during the swine flu epidemic, the WHO secretively changed the definition of a pandemic, removing the most essential criterion of high mortality. The current Director General, Tedros Ghebreyesus, is the first leader of the organization who is not a medical doctor. And the proportion of doctors and medical researchers in the WHO's management team has been steadily declining for more than 2 decades. Hence, it's not surprising that the WHO's COVID recommendations were largely unsupported by scientific evidence, but political and controlling in nature. And as exemplified by the Swedish response, which radically diverged from the WHO's recommendations, they did not work and caused more harm than good, particularly to the young and the vulnerable in our society. It is not surprising then that the WHO's proposals for both a new pandemic treaty and a new international health regulations are also not evidence-based in any sense of the term. They want our nations to grant them power to declare global pandemics without consent, expanded authority for the WHO Director General to declare emergencies unilaterally, mandatory quarantines, forced medical exams and vaccination and surveillance and censorship, etc. It is my firm opinion that all countries should follow the example of the United States and of Argentina and leave the WHO. International agreements on public health are important, but these agreements must be based on solid scientific evidence and clear agreements between all stakeholders, not recommendations that are essentially dictated by those that can buy influence within the WHO and use it for their own purposes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have had a request here from John Cage and Deputy Ricardo Arruda from Brazil that they want to go next. So we try to honor it when people, have schedule conflicts and need to go at a certain time. So Deputy Ricardo Arruda is a Brazilian deputy in the Paraná State Assembly since 2014, has championed conservative causes, notably proposing legislation against mandatory COVID-19 vaccination and addressing food label transparency. And then John is an activist in Brazil for the World Council for Health, Brazil. So Deputy Ricardo Arruda and John Cage, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Reggie, Andrea. I want to congratulate the organization, Maria. Hello, all my friends here. So I want to introduce State Deputy Ricardo Arruda. He's from Paraná State. He, in my opinion, he's the most important politic and activist against, the COVID jab mandates. He created and approved a law in his state against the COVID jabs mandate, and also for kids masking in the school. And now, since 23, we are in a fight here. Only this year, we made 15 public hearings in small cities, in city councilor chambers, in state assembly, twice with international doctors. So I want to thank all the international doctors for support. So, Dr. Ricardo Arruda, please, your first word. Pode falar em português. I want to translate.
Ok.
I'm going to translate.
Vamos lá. Boa tarde a todos.
Good
Parabenizo
afternoon.
aqui os organizadores e convidados desse importante evento contra
Congrats.
essa grande farsa dessa agenda globalista.
Congrats all the organizers and the participants and who's watching against this big farce is this agenda.
Eu sou o deputado Ricardo Arruda, aqui do estado do Paraná. Estou no terceiro mandato como deputado.
Third time elected by people. In sequence, pode falar, Arruda.
E eu venho lutando aqui há vários anos, principalmente contra esta vacina do Covid, que nem vacina é, com esse experimento contra o Covid, principalmente em crianças aqui no Brasil.
We have been fighting over 3 years against this COVID. It's not a vaccine. He said it's a gene therapy experimental. The mandate over the kids here in Brazil, because many here know, here in Brazil, we got a mandate for 6-month babies to under 5 years old kids for getting the school. Pode continuar.
Sendo que o Brasil é o único país do mundo que está obrigando a vacinar crianças de 6 meses a 5 anos de idade contra o Covid. E nós sabemos que nessa faixa etária, durante a pandemia, praticamente quase nenhuma criança nessa faixa etária teve problema com Covid. E nós sabemos...
Low risk group, and for this age, that's a low risk group. So there's no reason for we got mandate here in Brazil. Pode continuar.
Sabemos por informações já de estudos robustos que esta vacina não vem colaborando, não vai colaborar em nada com a saúde das crianças, ao contrário, vem causando graves efeitos colaterais e óbitos, tanto em crianças quanto adultos.
We all know this vaccine isn't safe and efficacy, and this is causing a lot of harms, side effects over the kids, the children and babies.
Eu fui o autor aqui no Paraná da lei que proibiu a obrigatoriedade do passaporte sanitário no estado do Paraná, uma lei importante que garantiu muitos empregos e, com certeza, salvou muitas vidas também.
He's the author of the law in his state against the COVID jobs mandate, and this keep the job for many people in his state.
Bem, o Brasil passa por um momento difícil, vocês estão acompanhando. As relações internacionais brasileiras estão com problemas, principalmente com o governo americano, mas por culpa do governo brasileiro. Isso aí é evidente.
We are living hard times. We are living hard times here in Brazil, political scenario, and we got some troubles with United States because this president mandate. Pode falar.
O Brasil vem seguindo um caminho errado, apoiando países comandados por ditadores, apoiando grupos terroristas como o Hamas e contra Israel e contra todos os países que imperam a democracia.
Brazil now it's partner from countries with tyrants, dictatorship, supporting countries like Hamas, supporting Hamas, etc.
Isso tem preocupado a população brasileira e essa agenda globalista que o Brasil, o governo Lula, tanto apoia, e a grande parte dos políticos e dos brasileiros estão totalmente contra essa grande mentira onde esse governo Lula está colocando o nosso país num caminho totalmente errado.
Our people are so worried about the support from this government because our former Minister of Health and Minister of Environment last year in Davos they announced Brazil is a protagonist of 2030 agenda. So this is a globalist plan, leftist plan, and we are worried about.
Bom, para finalizar, agradeço novamente o convite e digo a vocês que o Brasil é muito maior do que esse governo Lula. O nosso presidente atual é um ex-presidiário condenado da justiça, que deveria estar preso, só está como presidente graças a uma ação ilegal do Supremo Tribunal Federal do Brasil.
We want to thank everyone and saying we are here just because that's is condemned president should be arrested. Yeah, he was removed from the jail, and he wants to thank everyone. And I want to thank all the parents from Brazil and the kids, all the support from Andrea, Maria, Jessica, many others are here. So thank you very much for supporting our fight here in Brazil for our kids. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you so very, very much for joining us. We really appreciate it. Our next speaker will be attorney Philip Kruse, who is, he's an attorney from Switzerland. He's a law partner at the Kruse law firm headquartered in Zurich, but he's also been a major force in opposing the WHO in Europe. And last year, leading up to the World Health Assembly in 2024, he basically sacrificed his whole year, put in tremendous professional and personal resources into raising the visibility of the issues against the WHO, in particular from a legal perspective. And I was honored to be a part of his panel. He had 10 lawyers from 9 different countries talking about different aspects of legal concerns regarding the proposed international health regulation amendments. So we're pleased to have you, Dr. Kruse.
Philip just dropped because his internet went bad. So why don't we go to Shabnam's video and then we'll come back. He's trying to get a stable internet connection.
Okay. All right. So yes, so Shabnam Palisa Mohammed is an attorney from South Africa. Wait, I already pretty much introduced her, right? All right, why don't I just introduce her again and make the video smoother. Shabnam Palisa Mohammed is an attorney from South Africa. She is the co-founder and CEO of Transformative Health Justice in South Africa, the chair of the steering committee of the Children's Health Defense in Africa, and then she has various other titles, co-founder of the African Health Independence Solidarity Alliance, and co-chair of the Law and Activism Committee of the World Council for Health. So we look forward to her video, which is entitled The WHO in Africa, Global Health Implications.
The best strategies are always multi-pronged. My name is Shabnam Palisa Mohammed, and today I will be highlighting non-ratification of treaties that are a serious risk to our personal freedoms and national sovereignty in respect of the WHO and the IHR amendments. So of course, we have a few slides to share with you in this presentation. And again, it focuses on the WHO and the IHR amendments. Some good news, please look at the open letter to those who are collaborating with the WHO through what are called collaboration centers. You'll find that on the website worldcouncilforhealth.org. Of course, we know the oligarchy runs the world through these various institutions, which ultimately tend to benefit corporations behind the scenes. But how many reasons do we need to question the WHO, from conflicts of interest and corruption to crimes against humanity, including the sexual abuse of the women of Africa? The United Nations is expected to follow the rule of law in terms of laws that are promulgated and processed through this institution. But if you look at the website, you will see global governance highlighted 4,996 times, which brings us to public participation. There's a lot to be said here. But public participation is central to governance and to making international cooperation a reality. Doesn't happen, civil society does not have a seat at the table. Moving on to ratification, there's as a strategic barrier to IHR amendments, the new pandemic treaty, and other international agreements. Ultimately, the IHR amendments are not binding unless they've been ratified or approved nationally through a process where countries can reject, delay, or opt out. We know the window is July 2025 to reject the amendments. We know they come into effect in September, but all is not lost. You'll read more about ratification as a strategy in the Pandemic Treaty article on worldcouncilforhealth.org. Now, in South Africa, the section that deals with ratification of international agreements is Section 231. I'll highlight briefly the case DA versus the Minister, which underscores the need to follow legal steps. Ultimately, international agreements have no force and effect without approval. What is the process? Cabinet, Parliament, two-house approval. Of course, civil society and ethical members of Parliament can resist implementation. In that case, DA versus the Minister. Ultimately, it was questioning whether the power of the national executive to negotiate and sign treaties includes the power to withdraw from such a treaty without prior parliamentary approval. Spoiler alert, the answer is they require the process. So there's Section 231 in terms of international law. National executive requires prior parliamentary approval in bold text. The national executive did not have the power to deliver a notice of withdrawal without obtaining prior parliamentary approval. And so therefore, Section 231(2) of the Constitution was in fact violated. The case turned on the separation of powers, the proper interpretation of Section 231, withdrawing from international treaties without parliamentary approval, and of course, in summary, that decision was held to be unconstitutional and invalid. Full bench making that decision. Recommendations, many, and there are many more, but of course, we recognize our duty to challenge globalist institutions and to demand transparent governance. Of course, we work continuously on empowering people with awareness and with actions, including filing, for example, PAIA or FOIA applications, as we did here in South Africa on the WHO's IHR amendments and pandemic treaty. In conclusion, very short presentation, the IHR amendments centralize power, they undermine sovereignty and rights. Action is not only essential, but it's possible. Block ratification at a national level. That's how we take our power back, or it's part of it. A few additional resources to bear in mind. The WHO is alleged to have threatened delegates at the World Health Assembly in 2024 in terms of the IHR amendments. And there is an article I've written on, can the WHO and United Nations impose sanctions on your country for non-compliance? My view is yes. Please read that article in 2023. Of course, we've done so much in the last 4 to 5 years, including events like these, highlighting that the UN wants standing authority over 10 emergencies as defined by them, including wars and nuclear events, including, of course, pandemics. But it's not over yet. Multi-pronged strategies, politically, personally, systems change, economics, and using the law. Very important resource, a legal brief. Find it on the website, Preventing the Abuse of Public Health Emergencies and Lawful Criteria to Declare a State of Emergency. We need to know these criteria backwards and in every possible language. Closing with a very powerful cartoon there showing the role of the oligarchy currently in controlling our lives through various institutions. And in conclusion, thoughts, questions, and ideas. Let's keep the conversation going. You can reach out to me on shabnam@thewc4h.org. And I want to stop the PowerPoint there and say thank you very much for the opportunity. The power of the people is greater than people in power.
Well, okay, thank you to Shabnam for her contribution there. Next, we have Dr. Beata Sybil, I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, P-F-E-I-L, Fail, an independent researcher, former Council of Europe expert, and she will be speaking about WHO's dangerous plans and Germany's fatal key role.
Thank you very much, Reggie. And Yeah, the pronunciation of my last name is Pfeil. Very, very difficult to pronounce for English speakers. So, dear friends and colleagues, dear members of the human family gathered online, first of all, a big thank you to Reggie and Andrea for this important event. I'm particularly pleased that an international alliance has been achieved here today. We need this more than ever. I would like to briefly address the dangerous WHO plans and then particularly Germany's fatal key role. We are all aware of the WHO's existing systemic failures. My esteemed colleagues have already pointed this out several times, so I will only briefly repeat the most important points. The WHO is already a highly non-transparent organization characterized by fraud and corruption as well as external control by pharmaceutical companies, directly or indirectly. In the absence of an independent supervisory body, the WHO Director General can arbitrarily declare health emergencies at any time and recommend far-reaching restrictions on freedom or on this basis. We all know the dangers posed by the amendments to the international health regulations adopted in 2024 and also by the pandemic agreement that has not yet been fully adopted in 2025. We all know that the annex is still missing. Especially in their interaction, the two treaties increase the danger of arbitrariness, external control, and thus the danger to our freedom and health, self-determination, and to life and limb. It remains to be hoped that the adoption of an annex to the so-called pathogen access and benefit sharing system and thus the whole pandemic treaty will not succeed. My colleague, Dr. Maria Hubmer-Mock, who is also present here, and I took part in some of the side events at the World Health Assembly in May, and on this occasion also heard doubts about the realization of the pandemic agreement. A glimmer of hope. So, what role does Germany play in this context? The answer could be short, a very fatal role. Germany has been one of the leading donors to the WHO and not just since the US withdrawal. In 2022-23, around $3.5 million went to the WHO. In addition, there are earmarked funds of an as yet unknown amount that have flowed directly from the Robert Koch Institute to the WHO. This institute is a government agency responsible for infection control and is subject to directives by the government. Germany has also contributed almost $35 million to the WHO Hub for Pandemic and Epidemic Intelligence that was established in 2021 in Berlin. And then, last but not least, since 2023 alone, almost $700 million of German money has also flowed to the Gates Foundation, which is also known to be one of the particularly questionable earmarked WHO donors. Incidentally, all statements by the German parliament and governments also indicate that my country in particular is trying to secure a leading role without this organization. I am thus grateful to representatives of all German political parties who actively opposing the WHO's plans. I would like to make a very personal comment at this point. I have always been proud of my country in the past. Proud because it has also faced up to the problematic part of its past and proud because the German basic law, the Constitution, has established a seemingly stable system of human rights, democracy, and the rule of law. Only to then have to experience in the COVID era at the latest how fragile the system can become when a WHO uses cognitive warfare and is supported by the UN and also the EU to realize plandemics. I was particularly appalled to see how the resist the beginnings principle, in whose spirit I also grew up, was and is being turned into its opposite through political abuse. Hence my and our appeal. This is not just about the WHO. It is about a definite stop to authoritarian and totalitarian developments, a stop to the total power grab initiated by the WHO and other powers. What is at stake is nothing less than the preservation of our ancestral inalienable human rights. Generations before us have fought hard for these ideas. The WHO and its plans must be stopped by all democratic means. All of us gathered here hold fast to the vision of a better world in which human dignity, freedom, and physical integrity once again take their rightful place. Thank you for all your valuable work. Together we will bring about change.
Thank you so very much, Attorney Feil. Okay. Our next speaker is Dr. Maria Hubermag from Austria, the founder of the DNA Party in Austria. She's a holistic physician and a public speaker, and her topic is leading the resistance, using your voice to fight corruption. Thank you.
Thank you so much to everybody. Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Andrea Nazarenko. Thank you for organizing this. And I have to say, I was following the whole event now on the live stream. And I have to say, I'm very honored to be here in this call with all of you guys fighting it around the world and pointing out so many important issues and topics that we as people who showed up within grassroots movement over the last years can use the very important information that especially our scientists and legal experts share here with us to inform our politicians, to inform our fellow human beings. And I thought to myself while I was listening to the speaker who came before me that I couldn't be happier in this point of time to be with such strong people who are alive with me in this time in the world right now. And it's better than being with your favorite singer or Hollywood star, because I think you are the real superheroes in the world. And I think so much everybody, every one of you, and everybody who is listening and who takes a stand, who goes around with petitions from door to door to inform their neighbors, their friends, their families. Thank you so much. It's so important. What I want to bring up today is especially the situation in Austria, because Dr. Beate Pfeil and myself, we had a meeting with Dr. Sylvia Behrendt, who many of you know, and she pointed out to us just a couple of days ago that we have a special situation in Austria that I want to make public within this special summit. And it is very important that the people, especially our politicians in Austria, know this. And what many people don't know, the IHR is an international treaty. This wasn't claimed by critics. No, it was officially confirmed on May 7th, 2025 in the Federal Council's EU committee. And this is precisely where the scandal begins. According to the Austrian constitution, such a multilateral treaty must be approved by the National Council. Only then it is legally valid. But this approval was never obtained within the Austrian parliament in first place, not in 2005. Not now, when the interventions are said to become even more far-reaching. And this despite the fact that even the government itself admits that this is clearly an international treaty. We are not talking about just any administrative act here. We are talking about a set of rules that deeply interferes with our national sovereignty in health matters, freedom of movement, healthcare, and even state emergency measures. And yet the National Council was never consulted, no democratic vote, no open discourse, no legally binding resolution. This means that the IHR never became legally binding in Austria under international law, and the upcoming amendments can't become legally binding either if this constitutional foundation continues to be ignored. And now comes the crucial point. Austria has, as all of the other countries, until July 19th, 2025, to officially object to the new amendments. Only with these objections, we can prevent the changes from automatically applying to us, regardless of any democratic consent. But what is the government doing? It remains silent. It ducks away. It places itself above the law and the constitution and knowingly accepts that the key decisions about our health will no longer be made in Austria, but in Geneva. This is not an oversight. This is a calculated breach of the rule of law. And it is our duty to state this loudly and unequivocally. We therefore demand the immediate convening of a National Council session on this issue, clarification that there can be no binding commitment to the new IHR without parliamentary approval, and Austria's formal objection by July 19th, 2025 at the latest. The rule of law is not optional, sovereignty is not negotiable, and democracy needs courageous voices, especially when they are uncomfortable. Thank you so much for all of your uncomfortable voices out there, and I'm really honored to be part of this group. Thank you to all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next panelist is actually, should have been with the Israel group, but he was not able to be heard. So Alfred Schwartz is he's an attorney, but he's also got all kinds of degrees in the sciences and has been a major force in Israel to expose and oppose the corruption of the WHO. So Alfred?
Reggie and everyone else, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I hope you can hear me now.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Thank you so much. I had an audio problem before. Long story short, the situation in Israel is such that it is easier in Israel to pass treaties, which is why Israel, although did not undergo the ratification through the parliament, the treaty may be binding. However, and this is what I want to present to you, especially for countries that do not
Alfred, we can't hear you. Can other people hear him, or is it just me?
No, it's frozen. I think we should move on to the Americas and maybe he'll come back.
Okay. All right. So this is one of the challenges of just using the internet. I mean, the internet enables us to get together like this as people of the world, an international alliance, but then also we can end up with internet problems. So, and then, by the way, Attorney Philip Cruz has tried very hard to participate and just can't get over his internet problems. He's not going to be able to participate. Okay, so we move now from Europe to the Americas, and the first person is Dr. Sheila Fury, MD. She is the president of the Virginia Medical Freedom Alliance and a practicing psychiatrist in Richmond, Virginia. And the title of her talk is Pulling Back the Curtain on Beneficence.
Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be here, and it's truly an honor. And I want to thank not only each of you, but also the people behind the scenes who have done the deep dive into pulling documents and reading through attachments to bring us all the educational material that we've needed. I want to begin by saying we must follow the money. The World Economic Forum is working directly with the United Nations, the WHO, the global conglomerates, the financial sector, the medical industrial complex, and the education system to implement the Agenda 2030 and their goals of sustainable development. The goal is to make us a global society controlled by global corporations, tracking our data and every movement, in particular our financial movements and our healthcare. The financial conglomerates and global networks directly profited in COVID-19 from the lockdowns, the business and school closures, and the restructuring of our lives. These corporations aligned with the medical industrial complex to seek even more draconian control under the guise of sustainable development, human and planetary well-being, and additionally, One Health. One Health conceptualizes human beings, animals, and the environment as morally and ethically equivalent. However, human beings will be held accountable for any impact on animal life or the environment. Remember, some are more equal than others. This allows the government, medical industrial complex to determine interventions. They have the power to limit medications, as we saw with ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. They have the ability to limit treatments and life to those it deems unworthy and costly. Limitation of life will be either through direct euthanasia or indirectly through withholding or withdrawing treatments, all of which is happening now under the umbrella of choice. A choice often made without all the information, through coercion, and without family involvement. This coupled with unlimited abortion and infertility that is directly related to safe and effective vaccines and sterilization clearly reflects the globalist agenda to depopulate the world. The amendments to the IHR and the pandemic agreement are specifically designed to legalize, normalize, and effectuate the means to promote a transition to a new world order. With the sharing of pathogenic agents, they seek to intimidate the world again using fear and endless propaganda. They will offer their cure, and only their cure, as they curtail our rights and freedoms by controlling our access to money, movement, and medical measures. Mass vaccination, limited medications, quarantine, electronic health passports, and digital monitoring of every movement. Again, all under the umbrella of providing health. Why now? The global financial system that has worked for the last half century is coming to an end. We have unsustainable debt and endless spending and a shrinking, fragmented world population. To sustain themselves, they seek to acquire and control the data, our finances, our movement, what we have access to and what we do not have access to. They seek to be the puppet masters. This nihilistic plan will be the destruction of liberty, freedom, and humanity. However, we do not have to play into their hands. We must take the time to form networks of communities that will sustain us during difficult times. We must partner with those within our community for food, healthcare, education, and skills. Taking control of our lives and protecting our children and ourselves from the industrial complex begins by saying no. Saying no with the knowledge that as we throw sand in the gears by our non-compliance, we empower others to do the same. We and all of you are an empowering group that has empowered me, and I am most grateful to each of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Fury, for your remarks. Next up is Dr. Katrina Lindley. She is the president of the Global Health Project and founder of the Lindley Medical, and a senior fellow of the IMA, and a major force, courageous doctor in the medical freedom movement. I, have been working with her very closely over the last several years, and she's just a national treasure a national treasure from Croatia. Her topic is how the amended IHRs and the pandemic treaty threaten the physician-patient relationship. Thank you, Dr. Lindley.
Thank you, Reggie, and thank you everyone for being here today. Before I address that, I would like to say that everyone is aware that United States and our president has issued an executive order this January to leave the World Health Organization, and we are going to be done with that process in January of next year. And while we are waiting to do that, obviously it's very important for United States administration to reject the international health regulation amendments. I do believe that HHS Secretary RFK Jr. will do so based on the comments that he has made in the past. But we do have next few days to encourage our friends around the world to do the same, not only to reject the amendments to international health regulation, but also to do what we have done, start the process of exiting the World Health Organization. And why is that important? We all have been here together for the past several years because the World Health Organization came together to say that we need a pandemic treaty, and they went through many different versions of it, and the same with the international health regulation amendments. So what Dr. Jessica Rose said, what Dr. David Bell wrote, and what Alex Newman said earlier today is all true. These different versions of the amendments initially wanted to be legally binding, and recommendations were not going to be voluntary. They were going to be binding recommendations. And those recommendations over a period of time has changed from the binding to non-binding. They have taken the words dignity out of the documents, put them back in. But important thing is the intent of the document. The intent of the document, for sure, interferes in the relationship between patient and physician. Because according to the amendment to international health regulation, Director General now is going to have powers to declare public health emergency of international concern if there is an outbreak somewhere. Once that's declared, then the World Health Organization is going to give recommendations on how to play once that's in place. So they can recommend different medical treatments, diagnostic tests, vaccines. They can issue vaccine passports because they do like the EU model of the vaccine digital passport. They can also ask the countries to close the border if they're concerned with it. They can limit the trade to those countries. And this is where we all came together and said, this is beyond what an organization like World Health Organization should do. And this does have impact on national sovereignty of our countries. And again, I would like to urge everyone to look at these documents, look at the pandemic treaty, and push for your countries to exit the World Health Organization. We do not need a supranational organization in an event that something happens around the world. We have leaders in our own governments, in our own health and human services and other agencies that can get together and discuss how these measures can be taken without having the bureaucratic entity behind it. And it is important to mention that World Health Organization is a part of United Nations, and all our countries recently, September of last year, signed the Pact for the Future that kind of pushes forward this Agenda 2030 and even more control to these supranational agencies. So from this perspective of Americans and from my own perspective, I'm grateful to this administration for taking this first step in exiting, and hopefully by the end of next year, we're going to be completely out and not have any more relations with the World Health Organization. Thank you, Reggie, for your leadership on this as well.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Lindley. I really appreciate your remarks. And next up is Frank Gaffney. He's the president of the Institute for the American Future, co-founder with me of the Sovereignty Coalition, host of Securing America with Frank Gaffney on Real America's Voice Network. And he will talk about the Sovereignty Coalition and the U.S. campaign to exit the World Health Organization. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you, Reggie, and thank you to everyone who has preceded me. This is a most impressive group, and congratulations, Reggie, on kicking it off under your leadership. I wanted just to say very briefly that I'm really proud of our association, Reggie, and our partnership in helping launch the Sovereignty Coalition back, as I recall, February of 2023. As the pandemic treaty loomed, it appeared at the time, in the run-up to the World Health Assembly meeting of that year. Fortunately, I think in part thanks to our agitation inside the United States and obviously that of so many others around the world, they weren't able to pull that off. Despite their best efforts, and at the last possible moment, as has been mentioned by others, they substituted in these amendments to the international health regulations, which, frankly, got done much of what they were trying to do in the pandemic treaty, as we saw when it was finally adopted in May of this year. The point is that we, I believe, have had, I may have missed a year here, 2024 was when the IHRs were adopted. That gave rise in turn to the adoption of the plan for the future in the United Nations, and then set the stage for the rather, I think, pro forma treatment of the pandemic treaty this year. The point being that we have now seen a succession of very bad agreements that have had the kinds of problems associated with them that so many of our previous speakers have addressed. And what I wanted to simply convey is that one of the positive things that has arisen as a result of all of that is that here in the United States, we have been able to mobilize, I think, popular opinion and certainly the leadership of our country in important respects to oppose what this is all about at the end of the day. And it's not just about a treaty here or an agreement or an amendment there. This is about nothing short of establishing world government. Doing it, yes, incrementally, doing it stealthily, but nonetheless moving inexorably in the direction of crushing sovereignty of nations and personal freedoms throughout the world. And in the process of educating people about this, I'm proud to say that I think we've had 22 attorneys general of the United States in the various states across the country. We've had 24 initially, and then ultimately 26 governors. And we've had fully 49 members of the United States Senate. I think that number is actually larger now as a result of the most recent election, who have expressly said, we are not going to submit our country, our states, but the nation as a whole, and our people to the dictates of the World Health Organization and other international bodies that seek to supplant our constitutional republic with this world governance and as was mentioned earlier, elite, unaccountable rule. This is the lasting legacy, and it has now translated into Donald Trump in the course of his campaign for re-election. He, of course, began the process of withdrawing us from the World Health Organization due to the bad experiences we all had with Tedros Ghebreyesus's arbitrary, capricious, and I think, frankly, nefarious work on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party during the COVID pandemic. He was unable to complete that process before the Biden administration came in and reversed it on its first day. But he has picked up where he left off, thanks be to God. And not only that, he has done it as president of the United States, not just as a candidate. So as Ketlin Lee, our dear and revered colleague in the Sovereignty Coalition, has just mentioned, we are now on the path, the glide path, if you will, to withdrawing the United States from this seriously defective and Chinese Communist Party dominated operation, not just the big pharma and World Economic Forum and United Nations and other what I think of as totalitarian globalists, but the Chinese Communist Party itself. Witness its selection of Tedros Ghebreyesus to be the Director General of this organization in the first place. These are the sorts of things that argue very powerfully, I believe, for a different approach. Secretary Robert Kennedy Jr., now the Secretary of the Department of Health and Human Services in the United States, but a longtime activist in this space, has promised that we're going to move in a different direction, a different organization or different arrangements, at least, to advance where it's useful, collective efforts towards international public health. And not just, by the way, as was mentioned earlier, in regards to pandemics. In many ways, that's the least of our problems. There are so many others that need attending to and can be possibly best by bilateral relationships rather than multilateral ones, which inevitably seems begin over time, if not quickly, to be taken over by these globalist forces. So let me simply say in closing, I think Reggie Littlejohn, who has served magnificently in her role as co-chair effectively of our Sovereignty Coalition and now as the new president of this anti-globalist international, and I'm delighted, as I think all of us are, to be part of it. I just wanted to say a special word of thanks, Reggie, because of your leadership on the whole concept of what is going on very much in the mix in this effort to impose a new world government, is to impose a digital gulag as well, in furtherance, of course, of the determination of these globalists to force us all to conform. And I think that you have connected a lot of dots in the process of your advocacy on this point, including the contribution being made to that digital gulag by the IHR amendments, by the pandemic treaty, by the UN's plan for the future, by the prospect of central bank digital currencies, and not least what I call Franken AI, the prospect that we will have advanced general artificial intelligence and the like ruling our world, perhaps at the behest of, at least initially, these globalists. That must not be allowed to happen, and your leadership in trying to prevent it is deeply appreciated, and I hope will be, in the end, successful. God bless you, and God bless this good work. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Our last speaker is Dr. Andrea Lamont Nazarenko, who has also been my co-host for this event and put in just a yeoman's effort in doing all kinds of work in the background. I want to thank her. And I also want to thank, while I'm thanking people, I want to thank Oleg Atbashian, our technical guy, who also has been working very, very hard to make this happen. It's a very ambitious event from a technical standpoint. But in any case, Dr. Andrea Lamont Nazarenko is a psychologist. She's a researcher. She's a consultant. She's the vice president of the Global Health Project and the co-founder of the Inspired Network, among other things. And her remarks will center on taking action, collective voices united in resistance. Thank you, Andrea.
Thank you so much, Reggie. And thank you to all of the panelists who've been on. This has been an absolutely incredible journey around the world. And one of the things that really resonates with me is as I listen to all of our shared experiences, it's remarkable how folks from so many different backgrounds, so many different cultures, so many different value systems all can unite on this single cause. We may differ in every other aspect of our life. We may differ politically and religiously, and we may differ the way we parent our children and the way we tend to our lawns. But we share the agreement that our differences are our human right. And what the globalists want to do is strip us away of our identities by stripping us away of our culture, by taking away our unique histories, by taking away our unique life stories and the values and belief systems that we were born under, makes us all the same. So although we're sitting here today listening to these stories and hearing a unified message, it's always important to remember that the thing we are fighting for, the thing that makes our world colorful and beautiful and special, is that we are not the same. And we will resist any action that makes us so. Because our disunity is actually our strength. Our disunity is what makes us progress and advance and offer a world for the future that is rooted in the values of humanity. So as I sit here today and I listen, one of the things that rises up for me is this idea that you could feel so powerless. Right? I'm sitting here listening to these amazing, amazing doctors and politicians and activists, and I say, what could my one voice do? And so I want to close out the summit with a small little anecdotal story, because it was a story that resonated with me in my life. I was once on an airplane and I'm traveling somewhere at some big international airport. And, I was fortunate enough to have one of the front seats where you could hear what's going on. And so I'm sitting there and the pilot comes over the announcements and he says, well, we're going to be quite delayed. We're about 15 planes back in a waiting line. And you know that feeling you get when you hear the pilot come over the announcement telling you you're going to be delayed waiting in line and you don't have your water and you can't go to the bathroom. And so all of a sudden a lady walks up in a panic and she whispers to the flight attendant. And the flight attendant is shrugging her shoulders and saying, I can't do anything. And then the lady goes and sits down and you see the flight attendant get on the line. And a few minutes later, all of a sudden, the pilot gets on the loudspeaker and says, all right, guys, we're ready for takeoff. The flight goes ahead and we finally land. And the pilot finally gets on this loudspeaker and explains what happened. And he said, if everybody could just remain in their seat when we pull up to the gate, we're getting immediately shuffled to the gate. If everyone could remain in the seat. There's a woman on this plane who's racing to see her dying mother on the hospital bed. And if everyone could just wait to let her off the plane first, she has the chance of seeing her. The moral of the story is that first flight attendant could have done nothing. She could have said, it's out of my control. I have no power over the situation. There's a line. The pilot could have received the call and said, there's nothing I could do. There's a line of traffic. The air traffic control could have said, there's nothing we could do. It's out of our control. The receiving airport could have said, you're early. There's nothing we could do. But no one did that. Every single person from the flight attendant to air traffic control did what they could do. They all did their small part. And because of that, the woman was able to exit the plane and hopefully see her dying mother. The same story rings true today. You may just be a single person in a single country with a tyrannical government who feels powerless. But when we all just do that one little thing, just write that letter, just call that representative, just talk to your neighbors. When we all collectively use our voices, we are 8 billion people strong. The secrets that the Israelis shared today to their success, it wasn't a massive groundbreaking secret. It was being bold. It was being daring. It was not being afraid of using your voice to say, hey, this is corrupt and this is not okay. It was resting in the belief that the truth will always prevail. And so long as we could use our voices, we could plant the seed, we could create the ripple. And when 8 billion people create a ripple together, we could create a tsunami. There is a letter that has been produced by a team of international attorneys already written for you to send to your representatives. There's documents of who to send it to, all produced by international attorneys and international activists. They will appear on the Anti-Globalism International website for ease of access. You could edit it, you could make it your own, or you could send it as is. But please, do your part, just like the flight attendant did her part, the pilot did their part. Because when we work together, that is when we change the trajectory of the world. We have 4 days. We could do this. Thank you, Reggie, and thank you for everybody for doing their part.
Thank you, Andrea, for that stirring conclusion. Thanks to everybody for being with us for this marathon session, almost 3 hours. But we have launched an international alliance to stand for freedom. And the first project is to get our own individual nations to reject the international health regulations. As Andrea said, we are going to post the letter on the Anti-Globalist International website, which is antiglobalist.net. You can use that letter to send to your leadership in your country to get them to just opt out, to reject the international health regulations. Has to happen by this Saturday, or you can't opt out after that. But basically, this rejection of the international health regulations is just one part of what we need to do, which is reject the entire Great Reset, the entire race towards global governance, the entire erasing of our national sovereignty and our personal medical freedom. So I would urge everyone to not only to oppose the international health regulations, but I think that I would like to see all other countries withdraw entirely from the World Health Organization, like the United States and Argentina have done, and then we can establish a separate organization or consortium of free nations to address health issues in a way that is collaborative and cooperative and not coercive. So thank you all very much for your time. A video of this will go up on the Anti-Globalist International website in a couple of days. Thank you very much and goodbye.